The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. So with this power dynamic, elected officials grabbing power and retaining their power, how do you think you would go about passing term limits when the people who have to vote on term limits want to be career politicians?
Yeah, so I think there are certain issues that unite the country. So, for instance, 9/11, obviously I don't want 9/11 to happen again. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying 9/11, so national defense, really unites people. And I think the whole country wants term limits. I think as much as Republicans want Nancy Pelosi to get out of Dodge, I think Democrats eventually want Matt Gaetz to get out of Dodge. And so you can put bipartisan pressure on legislators to do the right thing. And so I really think you need a constitutional amendment to get this done so that future Congresses can't get rid of it. So I think, yes, I think this requires a constitutional amendment. I think gerrymandering should be packed in there. But to answer your question about how do you get people to rein in their own power, I really think that you need to have polling that is so much in favor of this that they have no choice. It needs to be like 80% polling in which both parties, meaning the individuals living in America who are suffering the consequences of Congress, are like, yes, as much as we want our Democrats to stay in, we want the Republicans to leave, so let's do it. And the Republicans, as much as we want our Republicans to stay in, we want the career Democrats to leave. So you just have to make it a bipartisan issue, which I grew up with Democrats. My mom is still, I think she's gotten more left as I got older. My sister is practically a socialist, and so I'm used to talking to people like this. I'm used to dealing with people like this. That I say dealing in the positive sense, not the negative sense. And so I think I know that I'm positioned to bring both sides together and say, let's pass this. Let's let the states decide. But I promise you, the states will decide.
That answers my question, and that was a Marcus question. That wasn't a question for the listeners. I've always been curious about that. So what have you learned about the 9th District that you did not know prior to entering the race?
I don't think there's a good answer on that. I don't think there's a good answer. I think a lot of people feel the same way I feel. A lot of people feel the same way you feel. There's a lot of just, I'm sick and tired of this. This sucks. I know it sucks. I'll tell you something. I'm going to answer a different question, which sort of dances around your question, but I don't really have a good answer for your question. What I've really realized is that people are like super upset, but they're not willing to do anything about it. And so I know it's not a good policy to hate on voters. On the contrary, whenever I'm talking to voters and they're rude to me, I kill them with kindness. I think you always have to be the bigger man. So when I was in Evanston, a lot of people were rude to me. And, I just smiled and said, thank you, happy Independence Day, and walked away. But I'm going to take this chance to actually turn on the voters for a little bit. Like, you just have to care. You just can't be watching Fox News or MSNBC saying this is sick and then not attend a meet and greet for candidates or not know the names of the people running for state rep or not giving $50 to a couple candidates, because $50 goes a long way. And I know that Jan Schakowsky's Congress has spent trillions of dollars and has increased inflation in aggregate of 20%. And so people are really hurting, but spend $50 on a couple candidates. Really help them out. $50 buys a lot, and that goes a long way. And again, there's powers in numbers. So if you and 100 other people get $50, now we're at $500, and that's real money for state reps and county clerks and other. Even for me as a congressional candidate, $500 is a lot of money. I can reach 5,000 to 10,000 people on Facebook with $500. And so people care, but not enough to get involved. People care, but not enough to give money, even though money is the driving force of politics. People care, but not enough to volunteer for 2 hours on a Sunday. And so it's really disheartening to see that this country's falling apart. Everyone's upset about it, but no one has the initiative, drive, or desire to do anything. And then that's one of the reasons why I'm running, is because I want to do something. I want to be a part of it. This is a hard race. Jan has won, again, since the 20th century. Jan has been in office. 14 people, including myself, have run against her, and most people don't get past 30%. Again, I think I can win this race. I know I'll win this race, but most people don't get past 30%. And why is that? If the district mobilized against Jan, she would lose. If people gave me $15 of their hard-earned money, and not just me, any candidate. I'm not making it about me. I'm making it about any candidate. We would win. And so what I learned about this district, I learned that voters really care, but they don't care enough to do anything about it. Some people are. Some people are really up in arms. Some people are building grassroots organizations. Some people are giving money. There's a small group of dedicated people that have been involved in politics for a very long time, or just entering, especially after COVID. I really want to call out Jay Swidler of Vernon Township. He really got mobilized because of COVID, him and his wife. And so he's actually the committeeman, the GOP committeeman for all of Vernon Township. And again, he got mobilized only a couple of years ago. But there's tens of thousands of Republicans in Vernon Township, hard ours. And they don't show up to his meeting. Why? Because they don't care enough to show up once a month for an hour. And I just wish they were. Not for my own sake. It's not about me winning elections. It's about everyone winning elections. It's about changing the future of this country in a positive way. Because right now it's going in a negative way. And I don't say that in the sense that, this election is the most consequential election in human history. Like all the Republicans and Democrats keep saying that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's heading in that direction. And so we need to get involved. People need to get involved, even if it's just a couple hours a month.
Very good. I see Jay and his wife several times a month, as they are my fingerprint vendor when I do concealed carry classes. That's not how I met him, though. His kids were umpires in Little League when my kids were playing. That's how I originally met him. So what are some new laws that you would propose in addition to what we've already discussed, like term limits?
Great question. Again, organic, rambling, new laws. I really think constitutional carry is really important. I know that that's a hot button issue for a lot of independents and soft Democrats. Most of them who didn't grow up around guns. Most of them who don't understand guns, and they just see them in the hands of gangsters on TV who shoot each other up, especially in the south and west sides of this country. I think two things about constitutional carry. I think, A, it's a constitutional amendment. And so obviously, even the First Amendment isn't absolute. You can't scream fire in a crowded theater. You can't assemble without a permit. Nothing's absolute. But in terms of constitutional carry, I think it's really important for two reasons. One, you have the right to defend yourself and your family. This whole notion that my wife and I live in West Artist Park. This whole notion that someone's banging down the door to rape and kill my wife, and I'm supposed to call the police and sit tight until someone comes and rescues her. No, it's my job to rescue her. And so I'm sorry that the whole world uses guns, but that's the direction that weaponry went. And so I have the right to protect my family. I had the right to protect my family. I shouldn't be put in a position where I have to watch my wife get killed or my kids get killed or stabbed or whatever because I'm not allowed to protect myself because of some crazy regulation. And then the second thing is the government. And I think people overlook this and thinks it's ridiculous and it's crazy, but it's not. I want to live in an America where the government is scared of its people. I don't want the government to think that I want them to be a little scared. I want them to say, listen, we can't overreach because the people won't stand it. And a disarmed nation is a weak nation. A disarmed nation is a slave nation. And so I believe in constitutional carry for those two reasons, for personal safety and to ensure that we don't become a slave nation. In terms of other laws that I think are as important, I think pornography in schools, I think that's an easy one. Sometimes I wake up and I just can't believe the bizarre world we live in, where you go to a town hall meeting or a national television and someone shows a picture of a book that was in an elementary school or middle school library and they blur it out but then they defend having that book in the school under the guise of book banning and whatever. I just think it's so stupid. I think the people that are on the that say that are just not serious people. I think they're ridiculous. I think they're ideologues. And there was a couple of women in Lincolnwood who were running for school board, and in the Lincolnwood Library, there's a bunch of books in the children's section that's basically gay porn, and and they were running against this gay porn, and what they were labeled was book banners. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you go back 20 years ago and there's a Playboy in the school library and you pull out the Playboy, no one would be like, oh, you're banning books. They'd be like, yeah, get the Playboy out of here.
Right.
The final thing that I would say is education. I just filled out my Ballotpedia survey. So if you go to the 9th Congressional District Ballotpedia page, you'll see me and you'll see my survey. And one of the things I really talk about is how education has been weaponized against children. Adults have been using education to weaponize against children, not just in terms of indoctrination, but in terms of, again, turning people into slaves. And I don't use that word in the chattel sense. I don't use that word in the my point is that if kids can't read, they can't learn, they can't do math, what are they? You know, if you have an illiterate population, what are they? And so adults need to stop worrying about themselves and being ideologues, and need to make sure that our kids can read and do math and create a future for themselves. And so I think education is the most important component of America. And I wish there was a law basically I'm fighting against unions. Basically, I'm saying that there should be laws that say that if a teacher isn't teaching properly, if a school is hampering the ability of students to read and do math for ideological reasons, then they should get fired. And so education is a huge issue for me because, again, I have a child. There's so many millions, tens of millions of Americans do. I could talk about education all day long. It's just disgusting, the weaponization of education against children. It's just sad that it's a partisan issue because a lot of this stuff just makes common sense. Again, pornography in schools. Whoever thought that we'd get to this point where this is a partisan issue, pornography in schools, and that Republicans and conservative individuals are book banners because they don't want porn. I mean, I'm going to stop talking because I'm rambling, but it's just, again, how did we get here? I have absolutely no idea.
Sounds like you want common sense pornography laws. There's a little humor in there. There's a little humor in there. I'm just being funny. That's all. So with that said, how can people find out more about your campaign, make a donation, or get involved, or even reach out to you?
First, I want to say that I answer all my own emails. I don't have staff that answer my emails. So if you email me, you're getting me directly. And more than often, I'll just write back, hey, can we talk on the phone? Because I feel like talking on the phone is a lot easier, more organic. There's nothing gets misconstrued in the text. So if you email me, which my email address is really easy to find, it's on my Facebook page, Cohen for Congress, or at the bottom of my website, which is www.sethallencohen.com. Allen spelled ALAN. Again, www.sethallencohen.com. My email address is at the bottom. Feel free to peruse my website. I made it myself. It's not hyper professional, and that's partly on purpose. I don't want people to feel like I'm a politician because I'm not trying to be a politician. I'm trying to solve problems in their lives. So yes, go to my website, read about me, read about Jan. We didn't really talk about Jan, but
we can.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to really quickly just kind of
go ahead, please.
Yeah. So Jan Schakowsky, she's 80 years old, which in its own right isn't a bad thing. I'm not trying to say being 80-year-old is bad. I'm just saying that Jan couldn't even walk the Evanston parade. She had to be biked because she can't really walk without supervision anymore. So that's the kind of place that Jan's in. She's 80 years old. She's been in office since the 20th century, since 1999, since I was 2 years old. And before that, she spent several years in the state legislature. So she's very much the definition of a career politician. She doesn't care about me, doesn't care about you, doesn't care about our children or our grandchildren. She cares about one thing, staying in power, which has been really obvious, again, a theme of our conversations. She doesn't care about the American people. She cares about economic migrants more than she cares about Black Americans in the South Side of Chicago. She cares more about government control than she cares about inflation. So again, aggregate inflation has been 20%. For groceries, it's been 30%, which means that 5 years ago, your $100 of groceries now becomes $130 worth of groceries. And she cares more about union control. She cares more about gay rights, which we have gay rights. I mean, I'm talking about transgender rights. I'm talking about things that just, again, destroy women's sports. Like Jan doesn't care if a man competes against a woman. I mean, she's just a horrible person, and she's been in power for far too long. She's, in terms of voting patterns, if you look at a nonpartisan, basically organization that put a graph up of every single congressman in Congress, and solely based on voting patterns, not on rhetoric or tweets or anything else, just voting patterns, she's as far left. There's no one more left than Jan in terms of voting habits. And so she just needs to go. She doesn't care about inflation. She doesn't care about immigration. In terms of anti-Semitism in Israel, she's voted against or present for every bill in Congress condemning anti-Semitism. So there was a bill that said the House of Representatives states that from the river to the sea is anti-Semitic. She voted against that bill. You know, she said nothing about about Northwestern, DePaul, and Loyola having their shenanigans. And she's just an ideologue. She's a far left ideologue who wants government control, high taxes, high regulation. She wants unions to have complete control over our lives. And, you know, she just doesn't care about us. And so I'm trying to replace her.
Very good. What final thoughts can you offer? Or, you know, it's kind of funny. I asked the question of what didn't I ask you? And we just covered it. But what final thoughts can you offer to the listeners about the campaign, how to get involved, or anything else you would like to discuss? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcus. You know, I really want to take this time not to talk about me or the campaign, but to talk about local politics in general. I urge everyone to just go contact their GOP committeemen. Just go contact them. The websites are really easily accessible. Or their county chairmans. In Cook County, it's Sean Morrison. In Lake County, it's Keith Brin. And in McHenry County, it's Jeff Thorson. And so just contact these people. Say, I want to get involved. No one's saying you have to pass out stuff or get signatures or go door-to-door knocking. But show up to the meetings. See what's happening. Get involved in the least invasive way in your personal life as possible, which is just showing up to the meeting, talking to people, saying hi, and then seeing where it goes from there. So if everyone did this, if everyone actually went to their GOP committeemen, got involved, came to the meetings, maybe gave a little bit of money, $20 or so to these organizations, we would have a thriving, powerful Illinois GOP, and we would have more than just 3 Republican congressmen from Illinois in the U.S. Congress. We would have much more. And so, again, don't worry about my race. That's too hard for you. Don't worry about other people's races. Just get involved. Just go email these people. Say, hey, I want to show up to your monthly meetings once a month for an hour or 2 hours. I just want to know what's going on. I want to sign up for your newsletter. Help build these organizations. And I promise you it'll pay dividends down the road for you, your children, and the future of Illinois.
Seth, thank you very much for your time and sharing your thoughts with our listenership. It has been an honor, and thank you very much for not only serving the United States as a United States Marine, but desiring to continue to serve in just a different role. Thank you. Folks, a few weeks ago, I read an online post from a friend of mine who is a federal firearms licensee who volunteered in Israel. And I really loved it because the guy went to Israel in a war zone to help the people of Israel by volunteering with the military. I thought, this guy I just have a ton of respect for. And he made another Facebook post talking about fireworks and rockets. And I wanted to share that post with everyone. It's only 11 p.m. and again, I cannot sleep. I plan to finish the finale of my Israel experience, but those final words have escaped me so far. There is so much that I still want to share. But words matter, and I want to get it just right. So that chapter for you is now an IOU. Tonight's ramble is a little narrower of a topic, but one that has been bouncing around in my head, or maybe echoing in my head since July 4th, Independence Day in America. My first July 4th since returning from Israel, and perhaps the first with what I feel are wider eyes and opener ears. Is opener a grammatically correct adjective? Those are his words, not mine. By the way of background, I was raised in a patriotic family. We stood for the Pledge of Allegiance and felt lucky to live in the United States. And although she does not recall it, my sister and I used to fight over who got to sit next to the American flag window decal on the 1977 Buick family car. Dinner conversation, or lecture might be a better word, always included politics. Always. A mix of an Ayn Rand type of libertarianism and hawkish republicanism. Personal liberty above all else, welfare is for the weak. The government is for jailing criminals and waging war. That's about it. So it goes without saying that July 4th was a special day for celebrating America and Americanism. To a great extent, I still feel that way about American exceptionalism, though my politics are much more moderate, compassionate, and pragmatic, or so I hope. America is still the greatest nation on earth. It is not perfect because we are not perfect, but we try and our intentions matter. America has given more liberty and opportunity to more people than anywhere else ever. I'm proud of her and grateful for everyone who has fought for her on the battlefields, in the courts, in the classrooms, on the streets, in the newspapers, in places of worship, and even just around the family dinner table. I still love July 4th. I must admit, however, that I do not like calling a holiday by its date on the calendar. July 4th is a date, not a name. We don't hang ornaments on December 25th tree, and we don't say happy second Sunday of April as we hide colored eggs in the yard. It's Independence Day. Truly a day to be celebrated as the birth of an incredible and unique nation to be built by the brave in the land of the free. Yes, I'm humming the national anthem in my head. Calling the holiday July 4th diminishes it, so I try to remember to say Independence Day. Getting back to the point of all this, I just returned from Israel and the October 7th war a few weeks ago. Yeah, okay, it got me. I called it by the date. It's the Israel-Hamas war, or Iron Swords as it's called in Israeli military circles, or good versus evil, as the world should be calling it. But more on that later. Independence Day patriotism was flowing through my red, white, and blue blood, just as it always has on this holiday. I dusted off my extra large, 100% shiny polyester, non-breathable, moisture-holding, and unusually tight-fitting this year American Stars and Stripes flag polo shirt, ready to party. Fast forward through the food, the beer, more food, dessert, and another brief nap. Time to go see the local fireworks. My teenage daughter had departed long ago to spend the holiday with her friends, so tonight was for my wife and I to enjoy. We parked in our usual spot, unfolded our usual chairs, laid out the usual blanket, and visited with our neighborhood friends. At 9:30 sharp, the first rocket was shot straight up and exploded in a bright red spherical display. A quarter of a second later, boom! The sound was familiar, but my heart jumped anyway. The sights, sounds, and smells were reminiscent of dozens of Independence Days of past and other days of shenanigans with fireworks as a youth. But this time, the sound of rockets exploding also reminded me of Israel. During my last week in Israel, I was working at an Israeli Air Force base in the Negev Desert, that's in the south. On some of those nights, the fighter jets took off for missions in Gaza. The roar of the F-15 and F-16 afterburners shook our bunks. A few minutes later, the fireworks started. We couldn't see anything, but we could just hear the explosions in the distance. It sounded like Independence Day when you can hear the firework displays in neighboring towns. But this was for real. Real rockets fired by real jets at real military targets in Gaza. Each time my fellow volunteers and I prayed out loud, or sometimes quietly to ourselves, for their success and safe return. Blessings. Go get 'em, boys and girls. Good shooting. Come back safe. I'll leave the last one out because it has profanity in it. and more in other languages that I could not understand, but with the same emotion and meaning. Another few minutes would pass before the jets returned to our base. Some guys were able to sleep through the noise, though I don't know how. In some ways, I wished I had slept through, too. As the orange sun rose over the Negev desert, so did my awareness of the reality of what we heard during the night. The reality was that we heard the sounds of people being killed violently in the rocket's red glare. Combatants, non-combatants, innocent people, complicit people. War is ugly, imprecise, bloody, tragic, and full of horrors. It is serious business and not to be taken lightly. On this trip, I saw rockets fired indiscriminately from Gaza into Israel, targeting Israeli civilians. I saw rockets' red glare, which is white during the day, and saw them burst in the air after some were intercepted by Israeli air defenses. I'm not sure if I'll ever look at holiday fireworks the same way again. I think that it's a good thing. I don't want to forget any of it. So next time that you are at your local fireworks show in America, remember that fireworks are not just a fun show of color, light, and sound. It is a reminder of the sights, sounds, and sacrifices of war. Please give that a moment of pause as you watch the shows. In the meantime, enjoy your peace and your family. I fear more fireworks are coming. Am Yisrael Chai. So I have a ton of respect for this guy. He, at his own expense, went to Israel and volunteered. My wife's uncle did the same thing. And these people are not in combat situations. They're helping with food prep, supply prep, all sorts of the background things. They're not actually in combat, although they are potentially in a dangerous position. I hope you enjoyed that reminiscing of the gentleman's trip to Israel. Stay tuned for next week's show, where we have more exciting information to bring to you. Thank you.
We have monthly concealed carry license CCL classes in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Dates can be seen at firearmmentor.com/classes. If you have a question, we can be reached at www.firearmmentorcard.com. That is our electronic business card, has all of our contact information and links in it. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.